Hi everybody, my name's Ollie. Welcome back to another edition of The Watch Collector. Today what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a chat with you guys about one particular brand and two models specifically, very recent to my collection that I love in terms of their color, their craftsmanship, and talk a little bit about the history around not only this particular brand, but these models, because I think they're very important in their lineup and ones that have been really key to them developing over, well, the last century. So before we get to it, the obligatory wristwatch check. And today I'm wearing the Patek Antarctique Passage de Drake with grey dial. We'll come to Patek and the relationship with Patek in another video. Let's get to it. So the first one I want to talk about is, well, the brand we're going to talk about is Patek Philippe, and the first one is the reference 5205R rose gold. This piece was released just a year ago and is with the olive green dial and deep olive bracelet, forgive me, strap. It's an annual calendar, which was first released by Patek in 1996. Now, those of you who are familiar with the history, forgive me, but this is how it came about. So you will no doubt know about the issue that mechanical wristwatch manufacturers had with quartz and the introduction of battery-powered watches all the way back to the end of the 60s into the 70s and 80s. There was a real issue for mechanical wristwatch makers as a result of this. All of a sudden, watches were much thinner, much cheaper to produce, and the Japanese movement really took off over these 2 decades or so. The annual calendar was actually first considered and conceived by Philip Stern of Patek Philippe. And the reason why was because at the time they had the, if you can call a Patek, any Patek, a basic one, they had the Calatrava, which was retailing for around $10,000, something like that. And they had their grand complication perpetual calendar. That was retailing for around $45,000. And what he envisaged was a model that was able to bridge that gap in terms of price, so that it was, as you can tell, that's a significant jump from one to the other. So to bridge the gap in terms of price, and also provide an option that was a complication, but not a grand complication. And it was really also as a riposte to the quartz movement. And so they actually were working with the Genevan School of Engineering, and they basically gave them the brief. They don't want to reverse engineer a perpetual calendar to become an annual calendar, but go away and see what you can come up with. And that's exactly what happened. That was in around 1991. And it was in 1996, after Patek Philippe actually patented their movement of the annual calendar, that they released it. And it caused an instant stir. Let's have a look at it on the wrist. So this one is with the automatic movement, the 324, which is in a number of Pateks. Extremely reliable and very beautifully finished, as you would expect. See, this one is finished in rose gold. And even though it's a 40-odd millimeter case, it's very delicate in terms of the way that the lugs are designed. They're actually see-through where they meet the strap. And because it's on a strap and not a bracelet, even though it is precious metal, it has a nice weight to it, but it's not too much. Similarly, because of the way that they've caved the bezel itself, it slips under a cuff very, very nicely. So as a dress watch, I think it's a fantastic option. And this particular version in the olive green dial came after the original, which was gloss black. And they also introduced a midnight blue, which was absolutely stunning. But for me, as you can tell by my jacket, I love green. And as soon as this came out, again, I asked the authorized dealer to try and find it for me, and they did, so extremely grateful to them for that. The next one I wanted to talk about, again from the same maison, again the Patek Philippe 5930P. Now they originally produced this as the 5930G, which is in white gold with a blue dial and blue strap. This one is in platinum, and I'm sure many of you will know that in a platinum Patek, at 6 o'clock you always have a top Wesselton diamond to indicate that that's the material of your Patek Philippe. Now a little bit of history about this particular watch. Patek have always been associated with world time. Of course, it was Louis Cotier who developed this in the 1930s, and it was the very first world time watch was produced in collaboration between Patek Philippe and Louis Cotier in 1937. They went on to make the reference 1415, which was the very first to have the combination of a world time and a chronograph, which is precisely what you've got in this watch. And when they brought out the original blue version of this, it was the first time that they had combined those two complications since that piece. So around 70 years later. Let's put it on the wrist. Now what's nice about it is not only is the case in platinum, but the deploying clasp is also in platinum. Then you have the case back. Again, powered by the same 324 movement, but with the additional complication of the world time and the chronograph. Now, before we put it on the wrist, let's have a look and a feel of the mechanism for changing the time zones. So you've got your 24 principal time zones, and over the years, Patek has changed the cities depending on how politics has evolved. So in order to access these, so we're in London time now, what we have is we use this pusher at 10 o'clock in order to be able to move them. And it's one of those extremely satisfying feeling of a movement and also the sound. So let's try and get it. And you can see that as the hour marker moves, so do the outer rings of the cities. Extremely precise. The jump is crisp. There's almost next to no vibration. It moves really beautifully. Let's try it on the wrist. Now, this watch is a 39.5, which normally I'm used to slightly larger watches. But in this color combination, because of the light surrounding the dial where the cities are, is much lighter, and you've got the green guilloche in the central part of the watch, I think actually gives it slightly more presence than the original blue version. Combined with, of course, what is a pretty punchy green strap. And I think actually that, combined with the weight of the platinum, gives it a very different feel. It feels hefty without being overboard. I'd love to know what you think about these two watches. Patek is one of those brands that, even through the darkest of times, as I alluded to earlier with the quartz movement, has managed to, I would say, pretty much maintain its position as arguably number one in the Holy Trilogy. I think their brand stands for a lot. Their craftsmanship is fantastic, and I certainly love wearing them. I would love to know what you think about these particular watches. Do you think this is too much? Do you think the green is too vivid? Do you think the other one is too toned down, or vice versa? I'd love to know what you think. Tell me what you think about Patek as well, and how they correlate with other watch brands. Certainly I enjoy wearing both of these. So guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.